So I've been talking a lot about quantum manifestation, manifestation in general, how to take your manifestation to the next level and make sure that you are able to do it with more ease and speed and consistency. And one of the biggest contributing factors to manifestation not happening, right? Like things coming into your physicality, your reality as quickly and as consistently as you want them to, is something called transgenerational trauma. And I talk a lot about traumas, the little traumas, the big traumas, etc. And so today I'm going to talk to you about transgenerational trauma and how the family dynamics, your ancestral dynamics, how your family dynamics ultimately have influenced you and potentially still are influencing you consciously or unconsciously. And for a large part of this topic and concept, these dynamics, these energetics, right? Like I talk a lot about accessing the energetics and being able to understand the mechanics behind what is contributing to what makes up your physicality and your reality in actuality, right? Which is ultimately just energy. And that's why my whole thing is all about energy intelligence. And it's not just about emotional intelligence. It's not about positive intelligence. It's not about being like, intelligent from an IQ point of view, but it's really about self-mastery when it comes to the energy that is informing, animating, and ultimately, right, like making up everything from our thoughts to our feelings to our emotions to our words, actions, etc., including the physicality and so-called reality we are engaging with and bumping up against. And so when I talk about access the energetics for you to help you accelerate your results, right? Whatever it is that you are trying to get in your life, whether it's well-being, wealth, relationships, something regarding your career, it doesn't matter what the outcome is or the tangible result is that you're looking to either get and gain and create or remove in your current experience and your current reality and environment. You have to access the energetics. And one of the vehicles that I use to do that, right? Like I talk a lot about different vehicles in order to access the energetics, because energy is very intangible. It's very fluffy. It's a very like illogical, irrational, like especially when everything around us is seemingly physical, right? And like we bump it, like you're sitting on a chair, lying on a bed, you're looking at this video at me through a screen of some kind, whether it's your phone or an iPad or a computer. And so that is undeniable. That is a fact that is in your current reality right now, that you're like, Carrie, I don't know what you're fucking talking about when it comes to energy, shmenergy, but like this doesn't feel like energy. And I get it, and it is, pretty weird, but in actuality, that is what quantum physics has completely proven and discovered, that it's all energy, and it's all like even more so. It's like even more like crazy to think about. It's empty space, which is even like weirder. But anyway, we're not going to go into that. Like that's not debatable. That's a moot point in terms of like really understanding the mechanics and everything. Today we're going to talk about the transgenerational trauma and how the vehicle, oh god, it's so muddy. The vehicle that I use in my practice that is possible for you to access the energetics in terms of the transgenerational trauma, right? So the energetics are, right, the energetic patterns and dynamics that are influencing you, that are informing you, and that are potentially preventing you, limiting you, are the obstacles, that energy that has been passed down from your generation, your ancestors, from generations, potentially not just parents, is potentially largely unconscious and subconscious. And so you've got to find a way, right? Like it's not just about going to therapy and like rehashing the past, because what's so important for everyone to really get and grasp is that energy is not just informing like the words that you use, right? So many people talk about like changing your narrative and changing your story, and like, yes, that is huge. But it's one piece of it. Your actions are one piece of it. Your emotions are one piece of it. Your nervous system is another piece of it. Like all of these parts and pieces have to be taken into account holistically in order for you to get the full picture and the full puzzle to come together, i.e. that being you being able to co-create your reality with more ease and speed and consistency. And like ultimately, and in actuality, we don't really all know the full picture and the full puzzle. So, even for me to be able to say like that I don't know. None of us fucking really know, even the fucking scientists, and the professors and the experts, like it's all, we are all putting the parts and pieces of the puzzle together, right? And so like that's just also one important factor in all of this when it comes to you being on a journey of not just manifestation and co-creating your reality, but just self-mastery. And like what that requires and entails is you are mastering yourself and what it means to be a self in this reality that you find yourself in, right? And that we collectively find ourselves in. And so it's not just about your words, and the point about it's not just about your words is that, you know, so many people rely on just therapy and just, you know, traditional counseling and coaching. And the majority of coaching, including in my practice, like for a large part of my career, the majority of my practice was primarily focused on asking really quality questions, right? We love the questions. If you don't know why I call them questions, I'll link up my video about the missing piece and what no one talks about regarding quantum manifestation and like why that's an important part and piece of this. But it's not just, right? So it's like the neuro-linguistic programming aspect of it, right? Neuro, meaning like our neurology, and how our linguistics, how our words inform our neurology. And then I went into like the psychoneuroimmunology part of it, like how our mind set and state, which is a conglomeration of, it's not just your words, it's your thoughts, it's your emotions, it's your mindset and mind state that then informs psychoneuro, your neurology, and then your immune system, right? Because then I got into the mind-body connection because, you know, when I was 16, I contracted Lyme disease, and it's a pretty debilitating disease if you've ever heard about it. And it took 2 years for me to fully heal myself and recover from it. And yes, I took like shitloads of antibiotics and really strong ones. And as well as I was swallowing like 30 pills 3 times a day at one point in time. But eventually when they wanted to put like a full-time permanent drip on me, like a little mini IV that I was going to walk around with, and I was about to go to university, I was like, fuck this, I don't want this to be my reality. And so I consciously decided and chose and stepped into and jumped timelines, if you want to use that language, to change the trajectory of my future and my health and my healing journey. And you know, today, like, knock on wood, that's probably got thorns, but anyway, there's lots of wood around, I'll knock on it. You know, I have not had very many recurring symptoms, and I'm largely healthy. And it's I haven't had an antibiotic really since then. I think I had one infection, staphylococcus infection, that I had to have an antibiotic, and that was the last one. That was like 20 years ago. I don't take pills ever. I don't take, other than like, you know, the odd anti-inflammatory, because I exercise the shit out of my body all the time, and so I just give it a little bit of a break in that sense. But even that, like, you know, I changed my diet recently, and I listen to my body is the point of that. I listen to the energetics of my body and what it requires, and it changes. I mean, I've been vegan and I've been carnivore, like, you know, it's the range. And again, when you listen to my other videos and I talk about the leverage points of change, I am not attached to any identity. So many people get stuck in, you know, either like the vehicle that they're using to try and access their own energetics. Obviously, it's largely unconscious because this is my proprietary language that I'm using to describe this, which is access the energetics and energy intelligence. And identity is one of the highest leverage points of change, to be able to change, you know, your resulting environment and reality that you find yourself in. And when you attach to any particular identity, right? Like if you, like, I am a vegan, like, okay, cool. Like you can be a vegan, and that will inform like what's important to you and what you believe like you can eat, and literally what like your behaviors end up being. Because if you believe that, you know, like if from a like an animal cruelty point of view, then obviously, you know, like that's one belief, that's one set of values and beliefs that are possible. But like if your body's not responding, I mean, like go and look up Steak and Butter Gal on YouTube. I think her name's Bella. She, you know, openly talks about her journey. Like she was vegan, she was fucking miserable, and her body was not responding well. She had the most awful acne and skin. She felt like shit. She was always bloated and inflamed, and she had to, right, because her body was not energetically in alignment and responding well to it. She went carnivore and she started eliminating all the things to try and fix her skin and her inflammation, and she's now a very happy carnivore. So it's about like not judging. And now so many people give her shit because she's eating, you know, meat and fat and like bone broths and oh, it's fucking delicious. And I get it, because I also, like, when I went vegan, it wasn't actually for any reason. I mean, I love animals, and I'm against all, animal cruelty, but I also realized that, like, we are, like, in this reality, it is what it is around, like, how we eat. And I totally get the unsustainability part of it. And I buy into all sides of it, right? And that's, I don't know, that's sort of just like how I guess I've been wired, and what my path and purpose is just to help people collapse, the dualities and polarities, and realize that, like, it's all relevant. It all has a place. It all has a time and a place, even though, time doesn't exist. I don't know if that's really the right way to explain this, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, when you are too attached to any one identity or any one role in your life or any one belief system or value, it is going to become a limitation, an obstacle, a hindrance, etc., because you are limiting yourself to what else is possible, and to what is actually available from a quantum physics point of view, like all of the wave functions and the infinite possibilities and potentialities that exist in actuality, right? Which is the territory, right? Is always there, but it's transcending. It's above all of the identities that you are subscribing to, and the values and the beliefs. You have to transcend all of that and get back to what I call your soul state, which is where all of that exists, that infinite possibility and potential exists in its whole state, and it's like true wealth, true vitality, well-being, abundance, etc. And we have to get everything out of the way. So it's all the stuff that the ego, right, clings to, and because it's like, well, that's who I am, right? Anything with an I am, anything like I am, that's why we get back to the language and the words as being one of the most critical parts and pieces of the clues to access the energetics. It's like, what are the words that you're using? Because anything after the I am is essentially speaking to your identity. And so it's, your identity is not some like big thing. It's not like, like, we have multiple identities. You're probably a parent. You are absolutely a child of two parents. You may be a sibling, you may be an athlete, you may be an artist, you may be an entrepreneur, you may be a leader, you may be unemployed, you may be looking for a job, you may be a morning person, like all of those things. You may be a runner, all of those things, a foodie, right? Like these little tiny, like, flippant statements that come with the I am this are speaking to the things that you identify with, and therefore are your identity, and therefore shape, right, and inform your values and your beliefs and your capabilities and your ultimate behaviors and actions that you take, and result in the environment that you find yourself in, right? That's the cascade of how energy goes from, right, its infinite form, from soul state and source energy and all the sources of inspiration. The things that are inspiring you, informing you, are then trickling down and resulting in this environment that you find yourself in. So when we talk about generations, right, you think about, like, how many identities, values, beliefs that you have, consciously or unconsciously, been injected, been passed down, been projected onto you by your parents, by your generations, by your grandparents, by family members, that you may have consciously or unconsciously adopted, subscribed to, ascribed, taken on, because when we are little, right, we are completely dependent on our caregivers for survival. Like, literally, like, we, if we don't get fed, if we don't get our needs met in a certain amount of time, like, we are too small and too incapacitated to be able to survive. So it's very much linked. That is where our nervous system wiring comes into play, is that if our needs weren't met at a particular time, we literally get programmed with a survival response that then carries through and carries forward into our present day adulthood. And so we might be acting out, and if we form these identities and these perceptions of, like, who we are when we are very little, and sometimes even in utero, meaning, like, you haven't actually even come into the planet, onto the earth, etc. You're still being developed, but you're still conscious, right? Because consciousness, energy, doesn't go away. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. So if your mom or your parents were having, like, a really hard time, or they were fighting a lot, or there was, like, a lot of, I don't know, just like, if you grew up in a war, or if they grew up in a war, like, it's not like those things are the effect of you. It's that the response, right, that your parents, that all the people have to those things, to those environmental factors, to those objective facts that just were occurring, right, that is really what we are trying to dismantle and to dissolve. It's how we are responding to all of that has then shaped us, that are the lies, that are the constraints, that are the identities and the beliefs and the values and the things that essentially unconsciously and subconsciously inform how we go about experiencing everything else. So when it comes to trauma, it's not helpful to just continuously talk about it, right? And like rehash it. That's essentially like your hand is on a stove, a hot stove, and you're not removing it. You're just sitting there at the therapist or the coaching session, like talking about how hot the stove is on your hand and how painful it is and how like you really wish you could remove it and you wish it wasn't happening and you wish like the hot stove wasn't there to begin with, and how you know, it's like, no, you can just remove your hand from the stove. And it's not, yes, the pain and the trauma and the experience, the negative connotation and the meaning that was ascribed at that time, and the influence that it had is not necessarily positive, but those emotions, those energy emotions, right, gives you the ability, right, when you give yourself space from it and recognize that those were just like the hot stove is just a hot stove. It's just there, right? It's also there to be useful. It also is there. It also has advantages and benefits, and it is a constructive piece of equipment, right, that exists in all of our lives to do different things. It's not just there to create pain. And so, when we talk about like, does the soul like truly choose atrocities and like all these hardships, it's like, it's not necessarily choosing to experience this. The soul, like source energy, is just manifesting itself in and through all of us as different like shards or fragments. It's like, there's one big sun, and then there's like all these infinite rays, which we are little rays of sunshine, of source, experiencing ourselves as separate. And we get to have this human experience where in this three-dimensional reality where like, we get to bump up against things and interact with things and experience the contrast of things. So the transgenerational patterns are often, things, experiences, relationships, and environments that we find ourselves in that help us to experience the contrast and to experience the different, facets of what is possible in this human existence. And the whole point is like not to collapse the wave, right? Remember, there's infinite possibilities because light is both a wave function, which is the infinite possibilities, and then the particle simultaneously. And the particle only occurs when someone is observing that wave function and collapses it. And the observation, right? The observer, it's predominantly like our egos, which are trying to preserve us and trying to survive and trying to it wants to survive, because that's the sense of self. That's the separate sense of self that is experiencing this human existence. But we are not just the ego. We are the consciousness. We are the source. We are our soul state. And that is the essence of who we are. And in that essence, like everything is whole and healed and totally fine, because there is no charge. There is no polarity or duality of right, wrong, good, bad, better, worse. There's no identity. Like it's pre-form. It's the frequency that informs the form, that precedes the form meaning like the physicality and the reality that we experience and find ourselves in. So when it comes to really looking at, generational trauma, it's just about looking at, okay, what did occur, what was happening objectively, without judgment, without like getting into the trauma and the drama of it. Because if you get into the trauma and the drama of it, it means like your hand is back on the hot stove and you're like, oh my God, it's so hot, it's really painful, and you're just looping into that, and you're just basically creating more neural networks about that. And that's why I think some, types of talk therapy can be really destructive, because when you keep talking about it, but you don't actually dissolve it, resolve it, get beyond it, transcend it, it's just like you're concretizing it. You're creating more and more and more neural pathways about that. And then it does become a lot harder to move beyond, because your brain literally now has like 100 more neural networks related to that, because you keep talking about it and you keep reinforcing it, because neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you keep talking about, Roxy, away from the flipping edge. So that's, Joe Dispenza's whole, sorry, it's very slippery. That's Joe Dispenza's, a lot of, his famous quote about neurons that fire together. Oh my gosh, please hold. This is so slippery. We are meaning making machines. That is one of our, characteristics, of the unique characteristics and differentiators of being a human being, right? Versus anything else. And so we have to look at the meaning that we have ascribed to things, because that is where we are collapsing the wave function into the particle, into the physicality, and therefore it creates our, supposed reality that we are experiencing. So if you change the meaning of something, right, you collapse another wave function and you get another possibility, you get another resulting reality. And that's all this is. That's all that's the whole point of, when you're able to access the energetics, if you access it, you become more conscious of it, you're shining more light on it. And literally light, remember, is it can only exist when there is no duality and polarity and right, wrong, good, bad, right? There's no contrast. You've collapsed it and you've seen both sides to it. And when you can see both sides, you have insight in the moment rather than hindsight. And you're not like only learning, right? Like by looking in the past, like in this particular moment, which actually there is the only time that there is, right? Is right now. Because even when you start to think about your past or your future, you're doing it now, here and now, right now. So there is actually no real like past or future. It's just all here and now. And so when you can collapse the charges and the polarities and the contrast and the judgment, essentially judgment, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the better, the worse, this is painful, this is pleasant, this is, I was criticized, I was praised, all of those different variations of charge, positive and negative charge, that's what you have to collapse. Well, you don't have to do anything, I say, but that's if you want to, become more enlightened and experience more light and freedom in your life and, create with more ease and joy and consistency, then this is the process. So from a systemic family constellation point of view, which is a lot of the work that I now do to really address trauma and free people from their little traumas and big traumas, because we all have a family. We all have ancestors. We all have like an upbringing that, where we were raised and we encountered individuals, family members, friends, teachers, whatever, like other people, right, that are traversing this universe alongside of us the whole way. So we all have these people that were essentially trying their best to raise us and bring us up and guide us in the best way that they knew how. So it's not like it was wrong the way it happened, even if it was, misaligned, unconscious, etc. It just was, what really is happening is like you don't have as much conscious awareness of the fact that, like it was just perfect in the way that it happened because it didn't happen any other way. And therefore, because it is what it is, it's just like, okay, well, what new meaning can you ascribe to it to make it mean something different? Is as simple as it is. So whilst that might not be easy, right? Because if your hand is on the hot stove and it really is sore and you've never been taught or given permission to take your hand off and to not be the victim of the hot stove, it can feel like, you are being forced to experience that pain over and over and over again and keep your hand there, but you don't have to. And that's sort of like why I'm showing up in your life right now, to help you get free of that and to say like, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to keep your hand there. And even if you have, burns and scars, like it's not like we take away, please hold. So the scars and the actuality of it happening, right? We can't take away that it was painful, right? Like none of this is supposed to be spiritual bypassing and supposed to, you've got to be careful of that. In both regards, spiritual bypassing meaning like, you can't just say like, oh, I'm all good now, like everything's fine, if it's still triggering and if you are still charged by it. And equally, right, like if it is still painful and you are still keeping your hand there and talking about it and referencing it and showing people the scars and being like, look at this, or like blaming the scars and blaming the thing for the life that you have now, like that's also not, how's that working out for you? Like we've got to look at that and say like, okay, if that's not working for you, that's the source code that needs to be written, because it's really not all, it's not actuality. Like that's not, you are only responding to your map of the territory, and the map is not the territory, right? Your map is just your representation, your reality that is not actuality. It's not what is possible. There is way more that's possible for you, but we have to get out the way all the meanings, all the language, the words, the values, the identities, the beliefs, etc., all the capabilities, unconscious or subconscious or conscious, that all the survival strategies, right? So some of it is conscious, some of it is conscious competence, some of it you've learned, how, you're competent, you're skilled in ways to survive and to overcompensate or undercompensate for whatever it is that you believe and have identified with based on whatever experiences that, are unresolved in your past. And so we have to, make that you have to go and unwind the unconscious competence, because if you're unconsciously competent, it means that it's second nature to you. And that's where you get like your people pleasers or your, like the people, the A-type personalities that like do everything and like can't ask for help and all the things, right? Like where there's overcompensations, because essentially like, you are operating from unconsciously, but you have a competence in projecting that energy, right? Again, unfucking consciously projecting an energy of like, leave me. So it's not just about, learning how to do new things, right? Which is so much what like the traditional gurus and experts in self-development and self-growth and manifestation tell you to do, is like, you've got to do new things. You've got to be a new person. You've got to, take new actions, create a new routine. It's like, no, sometimes you have to undo everything that you are doing, right? That is contributing to your current experience and reality as it is now. Because if it's not working for you, then obviously like, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So systemic family constellation is one of the most powerful vehicles, right? Ways of accessing the energetics, right? To access your energetic field, ancestral field, and it transcends words and language and, the logic and the rationale and the ego. Essentially, it helps you to put that all aside and to just access the field and get a sense of what the field requires, what your family system requires to bring more balance, bring more harmony, collapse the charges, collapse the wave function, however you want to see it, and to transcend all of the patterns and the programs and the conditioning and the programming that you've been operating from that isn't potentially yours or that isn't actually helping you anymore. Okay, sorry, my arm is getting extremely tired. So when you are able to transcend the representations, all of the maps, right? All of the filters, all the film strips that you are perceiving through, right? Which is not actuality. Those are your maps. It's not the territory. It's not actuality. It's just your reality. It's not the same thing. You are able to access greater possibility and potentiality and bring that into your reality and see like, okay, well, what does my reality require right now from an infinite intelligence point of view, not your ego mind, right? Trying to solve it, fix it, figure it out. And because remember that the ego is going to place blame. It's going to, because it's going to protect itself. It wants to survive. And so this is where like when you constantly see that like other people need to be fixed or like, you're not the problem, that's the ego wanting to preserve itself and right, not look at itself or not look at the dynamic or not, because this is where like, in soul state, source, infinite intelligence, like that is where like unity, unconditional love, etc., like that all exists there. True abundance, infinite abundance, it exists at the soul state, source energy state. So systemic family constellation is one of the most profound and magical and very practical and pragmatic processes to access your generational energy, right? And not even generational. It can be for anything. It's just you are accessing the field of energy that is informing your system, because you are a whole system, and then you are a system within a system, right? And a system within a system and a system. It's like Russian dolls, like, and that's why the systemic nature is so helpful and sustainable. Systemic and sustainable go together. When you take a more systemic and holistic approach, looking at all the different puzzle pieces, the whole puzzle together, that's when you can have more sustainable results. So that's another option when I talk about these frameworks and these processes and these vehicles to be able to access energetics and increase your energy intelligence and become more masterful at being able to manifest or co-create your reality with more ease and speed and consistency. This is yet another one. So if you are loving this content, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you know when the next video is uploaded. If you have any comments or questions, drop them down below. If you want to work with me one-on-one, in the description, there are some links. If you want to go through a more self-paced program of mine, that's Aligned Living, you can access that below as well. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.